Here at CEDA, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we live, work and meet on. We pay our respects to elders, past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge that this land was never ceded. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Welcome to the CDAH Peers podcast.
This is a space for peers to chat about what matters to us.
You'll meet peers from Community Disability Alliance Hunter, or CEDAH.
Sharing lived experience with peers and allies.
This series is all about human rights.
Some of these topics are challenging.
So we will make sure there is a clear warning for each episode.
So you can make a decision that's right for you.
So come and join the conversation because there's
Nothing about us without us.
Hello and welcome to the CEDAH Peers podcast. I'm Cath. Do you ever feel held back by expectations? Not yours, but other people's. As people with disability, quite often they're low. I'm really excited to introduce you to a woman who smashed the expectations placed on her. Emma Myers is a journalist, screenwriter, disability advocate and podcast host. And she joins us from Parliament House, Canberra, where she works as a disability rights and political reporter. Welcome, Emma. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lots to start and talk about today. I'm just wondering if you would mind describing your disability. Don't have to get into diagnosis, but mainly just how it impacts on your life on a daily basis, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I have ataxic cerebral palsy, which means my fine motor skills kind of fluctuate, mainly on my left side, and I'm tired a lot because I have difficulty controlling my body, and it impacts me in the way that I can't work past a certain time. So I'm grateful that my job at the moment it gives me flexibility to work from 8 until around 2:30. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That's really good. I would love to start by talking to you a little bit about your growing up. You're from the Hunter. Just wondering if you want to give us a bit of a snapshot of what your growing up experiences were like, maybe around education too.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Hunter Valley. My dad's born and bred in Newcastle, and so on and so on. I didn't have the best experience with the education system growing up. My parents contemplated special education for 2 seconds before they realised that it wasn't that they thought that I'd be good in special education. They just thought I'd get more support there, but then again, they kind of didn't want to wrap me in cotton wool, so they sent me to public school, and even though they thought I'd get bullied, and they were dead on, they thought that it'd prepare me for the harsh realities of life, Well, I had good teachers. They also had teachers who didn't, they didn't think that I'd make anything they didn't think I'd carve out a life for myself. They discouraged me from getting the ATAR. I remember one time in roll call they handed out a big book of every uni course in the country, and they handed it out to put it down in front of every student except me, and they just walked out of the room.
What was that moment like for you, Emma?
a slap in the face.
Yeah.
And they still proclaim me a success based on their treatment of me.
Wow. So they take the credit.
They take the credit that they pushed me to be my best self. Even though they're the ones that pretty much said I'd end up on the disability pension and wouldn't make anything for myself.
There's a quote that's coming to my mind at the moment. Graham Innes, who's the former Disability Discrimination Commissioner, and I think he's currently on the board of the NDIA, and he uses this phrase, which is the soft bigotry of low expectations. And I'm just wondering if that kind of resonates with you, the soft bigotry of low expectations.
I love that quote so much. Yes, it does resonate with me. It's, you know, they don't think that they're being bigots. They don't think that they're being discriminating. They don't think that they're discriminating. They think that they're still helping. You know, and I actually bumped into a teacher's aide of mine from primary school just months ago before I moved to Canberra, and I told her everything that I've achieved because she was a horrible person, and she's like, well, I'm glad I pushed you.
Unbelievable.
Because she got mad at me when I couldn't grasp a simple math question, which wasn't actually simple at all, and wasn't really relevant to life. But no matter how many times she explained it to me, it just didn't sink in, and she got mad at me for it. But there were other things that she did that weren't great. Yeah. And even my parents didn't know how they could handle it because she was married to the school principal.
And you're in a rural area, would you say? Yeah. There's a lot of things there, a lot of issues to work with. I'm hearing and sensing. Wondering how you moved, I guess, from those experiences of being kind of undervalued, underestimated, to where you are now, which among some of the things I know, you're a disability reporter at Parliament House, and you've co-written and created an amazing SBS sort of series about disability and relationships. So how did you get from that kid in primary school who was told that nothing much would happen in your life to where you are now, do you think?
I've always loved learning, and even though I couldn't read until I was 14, again, due to people just not caring enough to teach me how to read. But I've always loved learning, and I've always loved media, and, you know, growing up, everyone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd always say, an actor or something in the entertainment field. And I always joke that, I could never hold down a normal job, and somehow the working in media is more stable for me than working as a waitress or working, you know, in a quote-unquote average environment.
That's really interesting, because would you say that kind of goes against the perceptions that maybe people have that the media is an incredibly difficult industry to crack, if you like, but for you, you can see some stability. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I think that's why. I mean, that's my parents did kind of say, "Oh, do you really want to go into that?" And I'm like, "Well, no one else will have me, and the only thing I'm good at is writing and talking and it seemed more of a sustainable pathway than acting. So so I did that, but I think someone actually said to me that once you've got your foot in the door in this industry, it's all kind of upwards from there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I wonder if there must be a fairly significant dose of determination, Emma, in the experiences that you have had so far.
Oh, look, you call it determination, I call it stubbornness. I think that's a bit of both in me. You know, as I said, I've always loved learning and standing up for people who can't stand up for themselves. And so, and being told no, I would always say, don't tell me what I can't do. And so, it's just kind of, I mean, I do it for myself, don't get me wrong, but I think there's always a little bit in everyone that's been told no, that they're like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. But yeah, I've always loved creating content, and I've always loved kind of using my work as a kind of outlet to educate people or re-educate people on what we can achieve.
Fantastic. Can we come back to your comment about wanting to, fight for people that are unable to fight for themselves and speak for themselves? One of the things we love to talk about on this podcast is human rights, and you describe yourself as a disability advocate, I think. So where might human rights and your sense of them fit into the work that you do?
Well, disability rights are human rights and vice versa. Like, there is no distinction between the two. We are first and foremost human, just the same as anyone else. We all have a heartbeat, and we all deserve to live our lives as equal to the rest of the world. And so a lot of my work stems from, human rights that are being taken advantage of, and so, whatever the news story is on TV or on the radio or in print, I kind of take that and spin it in a disability-centric angle and say, okay, well, this is affecting everyone, but there seems to be the assumption or kind of a lack of communication that it also affects people with disability in several other ways to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I feel we get left behind or left out of that conversation. And so I see it as my job. And so I see it as not only my job but my duty to advocate for those who can't.
There's the disability, rights slogan, nothing about us without us. It sounds like that might be at the heart of what you're doing.
Oh, definitely. That's above my desk and it's in my brain every second of every day in every decision that I make.
What would you say to other people with disability who might want to be more involved in a more collective sense of bringing about change?
Get behind other people with disability and bring your non-disabled friends, colleagues, family, even strangers, because we're powerful when we're in a group, but what's even more powerful is people, able-bodied people who are standing behind us, supporting us in our plight, whatever it may be, because disability is the only minority group that anyone can become a part of at any given time. So I think that's a powerful kind of thing to think about, but I also think that it's why people don't want to look at us, because it's like they're looking at their own mortality.
So much that I would still love to talk to you about. Maybe we might move on to the SBS series that you made called Latecomers. Can you just run people through the themes of that series, if they haven't watched it yet?
It's a bit raunchy and spicy. It's kind of just what happens when two strangers with cerebral palsy decide to explore their relationship with sex after watching their carers hook up at the bar one night in Newcastle, obviously.
There is so much in that description. What I found really interesting about, that brief description is the support workers hooking up, and that is during their work with the people that they're supporting.
Well, I should clarify that they're actually the main character's friends, but they're also their carers.
Yeah.
As secondary things.
Maybe we can have another conversation about the representation of that relationship, because there's a lot there which is really interesting. What do you hope that people take away from that series?
That disabled people can date able-bodied people. We don't all have to end up with partners who also have disabilities. And that's not me saying that we shouldn't date other people with disability, but there's the assumption that because two people have disability and share the experience of that they're going to get along. But I've been been made to go to some support mentoring situations with other people like myself, and trying to strike up a conversation with them. It's like talking to someone about the weather. You're not always going to get along with people like yourself. You're not always going to get along with people that are unlike yourself. But we shouldn't assume that just because two people have disability that they're going to end up together.
There we come back to that issue of expectations. We've kind of done a bit of a circle here, Emma.
Definitely.
Emma, thank you so much for joining us on the CDAH Peers podcast. And you have a podcast of your own, I believe. Do you want to tell us about that, where we can find it?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Access Granted, and it's all about pretty much talking about disability and whether personal and political collide. It's about getting people. It's by and for people with disability to be included in the socio-political discussions that impact our lives. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you so much. We'll be sure to check that out.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed meeting Emma today. Links to her podcast are in the show notes.
Thank you for joining us on the CDAH Peers podcast.
This podcast has been made by peers at the Community Disability Alliance Hunter.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, you can follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.
We aspire to best practice, and that's why this podcast is made in many accessible formats.
If you would like to learn more about this podcast and CEDA,
Head to ceda.org.au/podcast.
Technical production by Tim.